Hello everyone, this is Kat and welcome back to My Hero Academia Podfics. This will be the continuation of the Breaking Point series. This will be Fic 3 in the series entitled Explosive Breakthroughs. Summary. We've seen the secret side of the story. Just like a coin, though, there's two sides. It's Bakugo's turn. It was happening for as long as he could remember. He was pretty sure it had been going on since he'd been born. "Shut the hell up, you stupid brat!" A slap would normally follow, whether to his face or to the back of the head. If she was in a really bad mood, then he'd be hit with a wooden spoon or have a plate thrown at him. He'd have to dodge if he didn't want a bruise that his daddy would ask about. He didn't want to get the hag in trouble. She was his mommy, after all. "I just wanted help with my homework," he grumbled as he ducked his head, just barely avoiding a bottle that had once held apple juice and that would have cracked his head open if he hadn't have dodged. He wasted no time returning to his room and closing the door. "Don't slam the fucking doors!" He glared at said door before ripping it open and slamming it again just to piss her off once more. He didn't understand why his mommy was always so angry, but he decided that day that he wasn't going to put up with it anymore. He'd start fighting back, even if it meant getting hit every now and again. "I'll do what I want, you stupid hag!" he shouted back. He knew exactly what was going to happen when he heard a furious yell and then rapid footsteps. He grinned as he clenched his fists together and waited for the beast that was his mommy. He wouldn't put up with it any more. After all, he was going to be a hero and protect everyone from beasts like his mother, so he had better start standing up against her now, if that was what he was going to do. "Kachan, are you okay?" Deku asked with a trembling lip, taking in his best friend's blackened cheek and bruised arms. "Don't worry, Deku. These are just things I got in a fight." He grinned at the other child with a wide grin. "You should see the other guy." He'd seen that on a cartoon and thought it would sound good right now. "I got them just as good." "But Kachan..." Deku placed a hand on the blonde's cheek, gently, as if his touch could heal the bruise for the other. "It looks like it hurts." Kachan frowned as he took in the worried green eyes that were framed by soft green hair. The boy looked a lot like his mother, just like Katsuki looked like his own mother with his spiky blonde hair and crimson eyes. But because of that, Deku always looked like a bunny about to be eaten by a tiger, weak and defenseless. "Stupid Deku! I can't be a hero if I can't handle a little pain." "That's true," the younger boy agreed with a frown. "But I'd rather you didn't get hurt." Tears were falling down his cheeks now, and Katsuki hardly knew what to do when Deku started crying. I don't want you to get hurt," he cried out. Shit. He hated it when Deku cried, mostly because he had no idea what he should do to comfort him and make him feel better. For him, whenever he cried, his mother would hit him upside the head and tell him to suck it up, so he was never really sure how to help Deku, except to just hit him. That normally got him to stop. With that, he reached out and pinched a cheek as hard as he could. "Ah, Kachan, that hurts," Deku whined, even as his tears had dried up, leaving behind only the tracks down his face. "Then stop with the crying," the blonde exclaimed as he pinched the other cheek, making sure the other boy would be done crying and focus on him. "Even if I get hurt while being a hero, I'll still win, because that's what heroes do. They win, so I'll win all the time and come out just fine." That had the little green bean smiling at him, with stars in his eyes once more, cheeks now a bright pink once the blonde had released him. "That's so cool. I'll always be there to help, too. I want to be a hero with Kachan." "You can be my sidekick," he agreed easily as he grabbed the little boy's hand and began to run. "Come on, Deku. Let's go play hero and villain with the others. We'll work together to beat the bad guy." It was great to run with the green-haired boy and be free from all that was going on at home. He wished he could go back to be a child with Deku, where they didn't have to worry about anything, and all their minds could fathom was being heroes in the future, together at each other's sides. Too bad they had to grow up. And with that, the abuse from his mother only got worse. The smacks became hits that would bruise and leave marks. Sometimes she would repeatedly hit him with a damn spoon, and the plates had more areas to hit now that he was bigger. Though he smirked whenever she missed, because that meant that he was getting better at dodging. The verbal abuse was the worst, though. Her tongue was sharp and her mind was strong, even under the effects of alcohol. She knew where to hit him to make it hurt, how his grades were below that of Deku's, and that if he didn't bring him up, then his dream of UA would be gone and he'd be no better than a hack. How he was weak and unable to protect those around him, even with such a great quirk. After all, Inko was always complaining about her son coming home with bruises and scratches. How could he be a hero if he couldn't protect his quirkless and weaker friend from those around him? Her drinking also got worse, to the point where she was drunk almost all the time. Though his dad rarely saw that, as he was gone most days for work, his mother's job as a wedding planner meant that she could leave whenever to meet with clients or just have them at their house. She rarely left, and usually had a cup or a bottle of alcohol near her at all times. He learned to snatch the bottles when he could, dumping them down the drain to slow her down. She never suspected it because she always finished at least 5 or 6 of them in a day, sometimes more. It made her dangerous because she lost her ability to control her strength. Her hits became harder and stronger, her nails would gouge skin, and the nitroglycerin that she sweat would mix with his own, burning parts of his body when it did. He had the burns and the bruises and the scratches. No one knew what was happening at home, not even his father. He took his frustration out on Deku at school. He studied harder than anyone else. He made sure he got into UA, then he shoved it in that old hag's face as soon as he could, just to get a laugh. That weak-ass teacher of his was shoving him to partner up with Deku, to make him work with the lying piece of shit that had treated him like a fool the entire time. He didn't understand why the Insomniac was making him work with Deku, but he had to make sure that the Greenette knew to stay out of his way. "Stay the fuck out of the way, Deku," he snarled as he slammed a fist into his face, knocking him back and away from earphones. Right before he blasted her in her stunned face, he proceeded to slam a fist into her stomach and sent her flying into the animal freak. The two were working together in the exercise, and he could take them on easily. He didn't need Deku. But the little shit tried to work around him then, taking pot shots at his opponents like Katsuki couldn't handle them on his own. He growled as he grabbed him by the face and blasted him into the ground. "Listen here, you shitty nerd. I don't fucking need, nor do I want your help. Stay the fuck out of my way and away from my opponents." With that, he let out another blast that knocked the nerd out of his way, and for the rest of the fight. Then, during classwork, he'd be paired with the shit again. He ignored the idiot for most of it, only blasting him away when he was annoyed or when the shitty nerd said something he didn't like, which, even he could be honest with this, was almost all the time. He just wanted to do his work and move on with his fucking life, but no, he had to fucking deal with Deku. It went on like that for a long time, until a few days ago Deku finally just stayed out of his way. He grinned viciously as he shot forward, slamming into long hair while Raccoon Eyes tried to go after Deku. He made sure the shitty bitch knew that was a bad idea by slamming a hand into her back and blasting her into the ground. No one would face Deku. The weak little shit would only get hurt and then be in the way. There was no point in that, and Bakugo was going to make sure that they knew it. Then their finals came up, and they were facing All Might, the perfect opportunity to really show his stuff, to make sure that they all knew that he was the number one and he was going to take the fucking symbol of peace's place. It wouldn't be long after that he really would be the top hero, and everyone would know it. Only it didn't go that way. Deku left. That fucking bitch-ass shitty nerd fucking left him behind. The boy that had said he would always stay by his side. The boy that had said he would have his back. The boy that said he couldn't wait until they'd be heroes together. He had abandoned him and ran through that damned gate by himself. He was pissed. There was a tangle of emotions within him that he couldn't understand. They twisted and curled and clawed at his stomach and chest. His head ached and burned, while his eyes had burned and tickled with a sensation that he hated. His palms were sweating so much it took a conscious effort to stop explosions. They confused him mostly, and with everything that never made sense to him, he interpreted it as anger, and allowed that to grow. He became pissed real fucking quick after that. He was even more pissed when he saw fucking Deku yelling at that shitty Insomniac. He wasn't really paying attention to what was being said at the moment, only glaring at the shitty nerd. He took in the blood dribbling from his mouth and the slight slur to his speech, along with the blackened skin on his cheek where he'd been blasted earlier. He hadn't held back, and he made sure that the other knew that he was serious. It wasn't until after that rat of a principal had stepped up that he decided to put his 2 cents in. Fucking Deku was just fucking faking it. He snarled as he glared at the now furious green eyes that were only an inch from his own face. "Fucking say that again." He blinked for a second, taking in the fact that the other was cursing, something that normally never happened. "I dare you." He wasn't known for turning down a challenge. With a smirk on his lips and confidence in his voice, Katsuki spoke. "You fucking faked all that shit for attention." He snarled and jerked backward when Deku's face got so close to his own, pointing at the burn that he'd left there. "So I fucking slammed my face into your fist for shits and giggles?" That was a phrase that Katsuki only ever heard from All Might before. It was strange coming from the normally quiet boy. "Should have stayed the fuck out of my way, shitty nerd," he growled back with his famous glare, hoping it would cause the other to back down. He didn't. I was trying to fucking help you, he screamed at the blonde, causing him to wrinkle his nose at his old childhood friend in irritation. I've always been trying to fucking help you, but all I got are shitty scars and jacked up bruises and fucking pain for it. The same things that Kotsky himself carried as well, though none of them knew that the scars on his arms weren't from training. Not all of them, at least. A good portion were once gouges in his skin from sharp manicured nails or from broken glass or porcelain. He would make sure that no one knew about those. Then stay in your place, he snapped, crossing his arms over his chest and positioning his arms to keep the scars hidden better. He wasn't letting anything get to him, not even that. He needed to be strong and controlled. He couldn't let the other rile him up at the moment. He had to be better than the piece of shit that crossed every word he had said since they were kids. My place is fucking helping people, while you deserve to be nothing but a fucking villain, you piece of shit. His mind ran backwards in an instant. With that shitty attitude of yours, Kotsky, you'll make a much better villain, Mitsuki crowed as she held a bottle in the air, laughing all the while as her child laid on the floor, struggling to stand up and get away. You've got the quirk for it, and the attitude. I'm surprised your fucking school of yours hasn't actually already expelled you for the shit that you do to Inko's boy. That shit right there is rightfully villain crap. She chugged her bottle of Jack very quickly, finishing the bottle before throwing it onto Kotsky's back. He bit his tongue as the bottle dug painfully into his spine, but didn't shatter, instead bouncing off and onto the floor. Fuck you, he grunted out as he finally pushed himself up to his feet. I'll be the fucking top hero, you bitch of a hag. Not if you keep using Inko's boy as a punching bag, she slurred with a vicious glint. You'll be the villain before you can even do anything about it. He didn't even remember his body moving after that, only that he was now being pulled away from Deku, his nose and lip burning with the taste of blood on his tongue and lips. He roared as he struggled against the shitty insomniac, just so that he could get at the limp form of Deku and beat the ever-living shit out of him again. He didn't stop until the shitty teacher had faced him with a glare. Stop it. That's enough, he snarled at the blonde, making him pause in his attempts to escape. Then he was rotated so that he could face Deku's kneeling form, arms hanging limply at his sides, and his head bowed. Look at him, Bakugo, and tell me he's faking that. Tell me. He could see how the other boy's shoulders had slumped and how exhausted the other looked, not to mention how much skinnier he seemed at the moment and how small. A flash of chubby cheeks and a bright smile and even bright emerald eyes had flashed before his own eyes, but then was replaced with this shadow. This wasn't the Deku he knew. He didn't argue when he was pushed from the tent and sent home. He hid in his room until the trip. He hadn't wanted to deal with the hag the entire time, and he didn't want to have to face his dad at the moment either. Though he got shit from the hag when she found out that he had to go to anger management every day that week, per the school's orders, not to mention that he was to return after their trip and continue going until he improved. About fucking time some shit person realized how villainous you are, she roared with laughter, a glass of wine sitting on the counter next to her. Her crimson eyes had landed on Kotsky, taking in his hunched shoulders and scowling countenance. Good fucking thing that they're paying for that shit, otherwise you'd have been fucking expelled. He snarled at the table as she swigged her wide glass, gulping down half of the liquid. It wasn't like they couldn't have afforded the classes on their own or anything, but his mother always got on him for how expensive a dipshit kid he was and how much of a strain he was on their family. It didn't matter that the insurance would have paid for it or that his dad made more than enough to cover the cost either way. He was just a strain on his mother, and that was all he was ever going to be. He shook his head as he stomped out of the house, ignoring the screech about the damned door. He needed to leave right then so that he could make it to the named building where he was supposed to be taking these classes. He hoped that he could just glide through, but with an empath quirk heading the class, he knew that if he didn't improve, then he wouldn't be making it as a hero. He took a seat in the circle of the group of teens, all different shapes and colors and wearing different clothes and different hairstyles. He didn't bother to learn anyone's names or remember their faces. They were just stepping stones on his way to becoming the best. Now, we've been over tactics to avoid anger, to calm anger, and meditation techniques. We've gone over how to avoid situations that'll anger you and how to ask for help when you are feeling emotions that you're unsure of. Now I wish to move on to talk about the things that make you all angry, the counselor said as she looked at all of them, eyes landing firmly on Kotsky. The emotions you feel and the many other things in your life that elicit those emotions. And one by one, each teen spoke up. My father always hits me. The bullies just won't leave me alone. I fight with my siblings all the time. School's just so hard. all of which sounded like bullshit excuses, even to Kotsky, who had similar problems all around. He didn't want to deal with this and listen to these kids. It all sounded like a bunch of shit, and he knew that there was a chance that it wouldn't help anyways. What really got him was how the counselor of the group was giving advice on what to do about the situations that they were in, and how to fix it without anger, how to handle themselves and what they could do to calm themselves and keep calm and then reply to the situation. He wondered for a second if someone would do anything if he had said something about his mother. I doubt it, he thought to himself with a scowl as the teacher finally got to him. What about you, Bakugo? What causes you to get angry? She questioned, her calm sea-green eyes focusing on him. He knew that she was using her quirk to read him. The ends of her blonde hair would turn a fluorescent orange each time she used it. Because of that, he knew that she was reading his irritation at the situation. But he also knew that he needed to say something. He had already talked about the pebbles in his path, giving him a path to walk to his goal. He talked about the damn teachers that had always shoved him on a pedestal, and now he had ones that shoved him around and tried to keep him on the ground. Then there was the one thing he knew he could talk about, or, well, one person. Fucking Deku, he growled out as he crossed his arms over his chest and glared at her, letting her feel the mess in his chest whenever he thought about the other boy. Doesn't know when to stay the fuck down, or when to give the fuck up. Fucker faked being quirkless and lied to me. The counselor's eyes widened, and he dared her to speak before he was done. The fucker was the weakest of us all, but didn't give a damn, acting like he was better than us. He remembered those bright emerald eyes and sunny smile, that forever optimistic bullshit attitude. His shitty muttering would bug the crap out of me, and he'd take fucking notes on any and everyone who had a quirk. It looks like there's a lot going on there, Bakugo. The shitty counselor finally spoke up as she looked at him with confusion. You don't seem to be angry. I don't fucking know what I am, he grumbled as his chest ached, and he continued to think about what he and Deku were, or what they had been, and what they'd become. He thought about all the shit that he had to deal with at the moment, and then he thought about all the pain that he felt when he realized that Deku had lied to him about everything, that he had a quirk and had just been hiding it from him all this time. The counselor smiled at him as she leaned forward. Then maybe you should talk with him about how you feel and what you think. That might help you to find out what and who you are to him, and yourself. He grunted in response. He wasn't actually able to talk to Deku until sometime during their camping trip. He'd gone out for a walk, trying to get the spasming and cramping in his arms to stop. He knew that if he could massage them it would help, but he was hurting too much to do it himself, and didn't trust anyone but one person to do it for him. Not since the old hag had broken 4 of his fingers, 3 of his right and 1 of his left, massaging his arms when he had been 6. She'd been frustrated as one of her customers had had a bitch fit and shouted at her for an hour in their home. Kotsky had been in his room, so he'd heard it all, and had suffered for it later. He shook his head as he turned to walk off to the side of the building to suffer in silence, but stopped when he saw the mop of green hair of the other teen, sat on the grass with his arms wrapped around his legs and looking up at the stars. He paused as he remembered when they were kids, when he had run to Auntie Inko's for a break from his mother. She would take them out to the park on warm summer nights, a thermos of hot chocolate that she'd made from scratch. They'd sit on a blanket and look up at the sky, drinking hot chocolate as Auntie pointed out all the constellations to them, fun nights where he felt safe and wanted and loved. He even remembered the times where a white-haired man with bright emerald eyes would ruffle his hair. Deku's dad, he remembered vaguely, would join them on these adventures until he had left to work overseas in America. That was what Deku looked like right now. Those nights, going over constellations with his mom and dad and Kotsky, calm and collected and content. He walked over to the other, knowing he could hear him walking, but not announcing who he was just yet. Fucking Deku, he growled as he got closer, taking a small jolt of pleasure when the other had jumped in surprise. He knew that the insomniac teacher of theirs had been coming out to get Deku at night, so obviously he wasn't expecting Kotsky to come out. You need to fucking stop being a shitty coward and start damn talking again. So they could talk for real, and maybe Kotsky could really explain himself. What's it even matter to you? Fucking sign. It was a good thing that he'd learned it after the first time Deku went mute, when they were 4. Fuck, it was annoying but useful when they wanted to talk without the teachers knowing. It's not like you ever cared anyways. He suppressed a flinch at that, but it wasn't undeserved. He knew he was an asshole, but he was hoping to fix it. Because you'll fucking bug everyone, and those shitty extras don't fucking want to leave me the damn well enough alone. which was true. He had been fucking ambushed by the class that first night after Deku left the bathroom. They all asked questions, including why he was able to interpret for the boy he was supposed to have hated the most so well. His hands had tried to curl into fists as he growled at the other boy, but he ended up hissing instead as they spasmed and cramped. Of course his shitty arms would betray him at the most inopportune time they fucking could. It was annoying as all fuck, and it drove him toward anger, something he couldn't afford at the moment. He growled in surprise when his wrist was grabbed and he was forced to sit in front of the other, sitting crisscross so that he could fit comfortably in between the other's spread-out legs. He just about groaned in pleasure as the other started to work on his fingers. He felt the digging that began to loosen the muscles and relieve the tension that he'd built up from training. Katsuki had forgotten how good Deku had been at hand massages, something he'd learned from his mother so that he could help the other boy as his quirk developed. He was the only one that the blonde would allow to touch his hands and arms, the source of his power, and trust him fully at his most vulnerable of times. God, it was a fucking relief to have those fingers digging into his skin once more. They have me in anger management. He spoke up, letting his shoulders loosen up and his hand be maneuvered however Deku wanted. I have a feeling it has something to do with you and our finals. He didn't need the nod from Izuku to know he was right. He had known the moment the ultimatum had come from that rat principal almost 2 weeks ago now. He hated it, but couldn't say that it wasn't needed. Izuku hit a particular spot in his palm, and he felt the rest of the tension in that hand melt away, allowing him to relax a little as the other worked on him. God, he didn't want this to end, but he really needed to keep talking, to get this out so that they could fix this, and maybe Izuku and he could start over. He paused as he thought about what he wanted to say. It was a worry that he would mess this up, but he still had to try, so he ignored the tightening in his chest, the chaos in his mind, and the rolling of his stomach to continue. They said I should talk to you about why I'm so angry. He could feel his shoulders begin to slump and his body begin to relax further into the massage as Deku had moved up to his wrist. Said it would help lessen some of the anger, which was partially true, but it was mostly to figure out why he had such a tumultuous emotion set with the other. Maybe it would help, maybe it wouldn't, but he had to try and see if it did. Deku moved up his arms before lacing their hands together and shaking his arm out. He felt his wrist crack and his elbow pop, almost sending him to the ground in pleasure. He sat there silently for a long time, allowing the other to work his other arm out, getting all the strain and pain from the training that he had been putting himself through. Once the other boy was done, he allowed his arms to fall to his lap and relax there, allowing himself to calm and relax, try to get rid of that aching that was left in his chest and the roiling of his stomach. Seemed like forever before he spoke up. I've been in those shitty things for a good fucking week now, he admitted, his voice soft and calm, gentle almost. He didn't want to scare the other away or let him think that he was angry at him when he wasn't. He needed to be careful with everything at the moment. I've known for a real fucking long time why I've hated you, Deku. He wondered if he should explain that he didn't really hate the other boy, that Izuku actually made him want to work harder and get better so they could work together, just like they always dreamed of as children. He ignored the glare that Izuku sent him, knowing that the other had all rights in the world to be angry with him. It never had to do with you being quirkless. Very true. He knew the other could do anything he put his mind to, even if he was quirkless. I mean, it's part of it, but it wasn't the main part. Well, that wasn't true. His chest tightened painfully, and he felt like he was about to barf up his entire digestive system. He clenched his hands tightly, ignoring the little explosions that were emitting from his hands as he tried to get control of himself. Then what was it? Fucking sign. He wondered what he needed to do to get him to use his voice again. This sign shit was getting annoying. He growled after staring at his hands for long moments before he snapped his eyes up and met those jade eyes head-on. They weren't anywhere near his normal emerald eyes, but he could see some of that spark he normally had, making its way back painfully slowly. It's because if it had been any other quirkless shit stain, they never would have made it. What the fuck? He hadn't meant to phrase it like that, not at all. But being you, I knew you'd become a hero somehow. That was something he had wanted to say, something he felt in his bones and knew with all of his being. He knew that Izuku would be the greatest hero of them all, with or without a quirk. He shook his head and stood up and began to pace. His chest felt like it was a vice, and it was just clamping down on him crazily. He tasted bile on the back of his tongue, growling as he tried to figure out a way to say what he wanted without hurting the other, hurting himself, or confusing them all. You would have fucking showed the entire world how goddamn great you were, that you could do anything I could fucking do, but I knew at the same time that you couldn't handle all of it. He couldn't see gentle and sweet Izuku being able to face against the abuse children were treated with, couldn't see him being able to handle the rapes and beatings and straight murders that he knew heroes faced on a daily basis. It would destroy him. You would have fucking gotten hurt. Maybe not right away, but you would have. You'd have gotten hurt so bad that nothing would have saved you, and then that quirkless hero would be dead. Most likely by his own hand, because that heart was just too kind, too gentle to deal with the horrors of the world. It would be that, or he would have fallen into a depression that would have taken away that spark. Though that's not what he had wanted to say. That was far from it, and Katsuki knew that Izuku would take it the wrong way. And he did. Fuck. Katsuki jerked to a stop as he turned to the other, staring at him wide-eyed for a second. You. Izuku coughed for a long moment before whispering, the 3-week period being enough to cause some damage to his throat. That can't be the only shitty reason. All growled out like he was trying to imitate Katsuki's own tone. He growled back, even as his eyes focused on the ground in shame. That wasn't how he wanted to convey that, or say it, or anything of it, but he wasn't sure how to explain his thoughts about the worry and the anger and the fear and so many other emotions that he felt. I didn't want you to get hurt. You fucking tortured me! He could hear the tears in the other's voice, so he didn't look up. I wanted to make sure that you knew the dangers. There were a lot that even he was learning about at the moment, especially since they had been attacked by actual villains 3 days into their goddamn classes. You just said I could have been a quirkless hero. The first and greatest of them all, too, but he couldn't force those past his lips, for some reason. Yeah, and then gotten killed when you bit off too much with that fucking overbite of yours. But I could have. Why didn't you help me instead of putting me down all the damn time? Because he was a coward, that didn't want to see that spark and big heart to die out, and he wanted the other safe from the horrors that plagued the world. Because I didn't want you to fucking die. You told me to jump off the fucking roof! He could see the blood on the other's lips, most likely from shouting that they were doing. His throat was obviously not ready for this, but they were having it out anyways, which meant that he had to push forward. I didn't mean it. Which was true. He had never meant the other to ever consider that as a way out. He had just wanted the other to run away, to turn the opposite way of Katsuki, to stay safe. Yet he also wanted the boy at his side like he always was, to always have his back and to work with him to save others like they always dreamed. Yeah, well, that doesn't excuse your behavior, Izuku spat, and the crimson eyes followed that pink glob before it disappeared in the grass. He was overdoing it too soon after speaking again. You should have just talked to me, instead of hurting me. You should have been my friend and helped me instead of giving me so many scars. He could see the hate and anger and sorrow in those jade eyes. He knew he hurt the other, but he had no idea how much damage he caused. It weighed heavily on his chest, and he could feel his knees shaking. He wasn't sure how much longer he could stay standing. I'm sorry. He was so sorry. He wished that he could take everything back, wished his mother wasn't so shitty and that he had a better person to learn from when it came to emotions. Wished that he wasn't so much of a fucking psycho and could say all that to the other and maybe actually get some fucking help to be a better person. Not like it mattered in the end. It doesn't matter, the other said in perfect unison of his own mind. I can't forgive you right now. Maybe I never will. With that, Katsuki watched Izuku leave back for the building, disappearing inside. Only once he was sure the other was completely out of sight did he allow his knees to buckle, and for him to fall to his hands and knees. He heaved as all the contents in his stomach were expelled, and tears falling down his face. He knew he'd fucked up. Knew it for a long time, but he had hoped that he could fix it. But now he would probably never have that friend that had always been his escape from a shitty mother and a shitty home life. All right, everyone. This concludes the third fic in the Breaking Point series entitled Explosive Breakthroughs. Hope you guys enjoyed this one. Part 4, the fourth fic in this series, will be next. As always, thank you all so much for listening.